that full bore rebuild that they have not had for a decade. And
Yeah.
fans don't want to hear that. But I think that their thought process changes if they're like, you know what? We just had 4 games where our backup looked pretty solid. We can use some of this money on Russell Wilson's contract and go bolster the rest of the roster and build around either a younger quarterback, or if Geno Smith, Geno Smith's only 30. If Geno Smith plays that well, maybe they'd be like, for short term, he could be our guy and we can get better at other position groups. So I don't think it's out of the question, especially when you consider how last offseason played out. And eventually it became water under the bridge. Wilson, Carroll saying everything's okay, but will it be okay when we get to February, March, especially if they miss the playoffs? I think it's a very real possibility that this could be Russell's last season in Seattle.
Well, look, I got to tell you, that only means that folks like, Cody and I are going to be receiving a lot of questions from the fan bases for the teams that we cover about whether or not Russ ends up in our respective teams there. But hey, only time will tell. We'll see how long Russell Wilson is out, 4 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it's going to be. The best way to keep up to date with.
I bet the Green Bay game is when he's back. That would be my bet. Based on what I've been told, that's the earliest that he could potentially be back, but they have that bye week in week 9. So.
Mm-hmm. That's great. There you go. That's the type of information you're going to get every day over with the Locked On Seahawks podcast. Nobody knows it better than Corbin Smith. You can follow him on Twitter as well, at Corbin Smith NFL, and catch him every Monday through Friday over the Locked On Seahawks podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well. Corbin, we appreciate you coming through, man. We'll see you again here soon.
Yep. Thanks for having me. You guys take care.
Appreciate you. Yeah, the Russell Wilson story, I know going back to this offseason, they mended fences, but, then again, like when situations change, you look at the NFC West division right now, Arizona, they are rolling. The LA Rams, they look pretty good. And the Seahawks, obviously, they had that victory over the 49ers a couple weeks ago, and that's always a great thing to get there. But losing Russell Wilson is huge in terms of what you do offensively. Can Geno Smith maintain that? Now, the interception he threw, I think you can make the argument there that Tyler Lockett had fallen down. So,
right.
It is what it is. But, I think this is a situation that we absolutely have to monitor because the Russell Wilson news could have a ripple effect, not just on Seattle, but for many other organizations that are maybe uncertain about their quarterback position going forward. So, like Ross, like I said, I know if that's the case, it opens up. I know this offseason, Broncos fans are going to be on it. Saints fans are going to be on it. Even the Miami Dolphins might be on it. Pittsburgh's going to be on it. Everybody's going to be on that train right there. So it could be another wild offseason. We're still so far away from that, but here we are in week 5. We're talking about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Want to give a quick shout out to Kevin Clements. Thanks for being here, man. We appreciate it. We always try to bring the quality. No doubt about that. Hey, look, speaking of teams that are, there might be a lot of teams right now that are unsure about their quarterback situation, but there's one team that maybe is about to find out about the future at their quarterback situation. That's also within the NFC West. They're going to be taking on those 4-0 Arizona Cardinals today. It's the San Francisco 49ers dealing with an injury to Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance stepping into the role. Let's go ahead and talk to the one, the only former NFL baller himself, host of the Locked On San Francisco 49ers podcast, Locked On NFL. He's a busy man, but he still found time to come through. It's Eric Crocker. How you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. How y'all doing this morning?
Great,
We're
buddy.
blessed,
Good to see you, man.
Croc, you're one of my favorite guys out there, man. When I talk DB stuff, I'm like, I have nobody to talk with. Now I see Croc's in, the Locked On Podcast Network family. I'm stoked about it, my friend. But hey, we'll talk DBs later. But let's talk about this matchup here between the 49ers and the Cardinals. Obviously, the Cardinals off to a hot start. The storyline this week is Jimmy Garoppolo going to play? Well, obviously, we know that Trey Lance is going to make his start this week. But some bad news on the injury side of things as well. Kittle is on IR now for the next 3 weeks with a calf injury. How might this impact the 49ers game plan coming into this matchup and for the next 3 weeks without some potential offensive weapons?
Man, I think it's big, especially when you're starting a rookie, first career start, and you're missing George Kittle, who essentially should be the safety blanket, right? When you look at a lot of quarterbacks are in the NFL and they're coming in as rookies, who do they depend on? The guy that's really closest to them in proximity, and a lot of times it's the tight end or the running backs catching passes out the backfield. So I definitely think George Kittle, I don't know how much he'll impact the game plan, but in the sense of just kind of impacting Trey Lance, I think it's huge. I think it's huge to not have that guy you can count on, big-time playmaker, run after catch. He's involved in the run game blocking. He's involved in the pass game blocking. He's almost like another tackle on the team. So you're missing that aspect of it as well. He's the heart and soul of the 49ers offense and brings that energy I think it's a big blow not having George Kittle out there.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely on point with exactly where I was going to go with. It's usually the guys that are closest in proximity to him. Who now is that guy that he's going to be looking for in his first action here?
Oh, it's got to be Deebo Samuel, right? I mean, he's got to be the guy that you just find every way to get the ball in his hands, whether it's screens, tunnel screens, bubble screens. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in the backfield, and then down the field as well. He's catching slants, he's catching over routes. I think Deebo Samuel will have a huge hand. Now, if we're talking about somebody that might be like a little bit underrated and kind of lost in the shuffle with some of the weapons that the 49ers have, most people probably think I'd say Deebo Samuel. But I'm actually going to go with Mohamed Sanu. He caught a couple passes late for Trey Lance in that game, a couple to move the sticks. I think he's another guy. We talked about being in close proximity to the quarterback. He's playing in that slot a whole lot. He's somebody that I'd expect to really be in there and help kind of be a chain mover for Trey Lance. And he catches everything, too, for the most part. So I think that'd be good.
Well, I have yet to take Deebo Samuel out of my fantasy lineup so far this season. He has not let me down. But, looking at this matchup as well, we see Kyler Murray, this dynamic offense, what the Cardinals have been able to do. They got DeAndre Hopkins, they got AJ Green, they got Christian Kirk, they got Rondale Moore. And not to mention, you have to cover extensively longer. And Crocker, I wanted to ask you this from a DB perspective. Going against an offense like this that has the weapons that they do with the playmaking ability of Kyler Murray, how hard is it for a cornerback to essentially have to cover a guy twice? Because your initial cover, from the snap, and then when he escapes the pocket, you have to stay on it again. Describe what that's like from a DB's perspective.
Oh, it's extremely difficult for two reasons. One, you're liable to kind of hold a guy once he starts to move around. So you have that aspect of it. But then two, just having to cover for an extended period of time. And whether it's man coverage, whether it's zone coverage, in zone against a quarterback that moves around like that, it actually turns into man because you have to plaster to a guy, but then you can also kind of vacate in the area and leave a big void in the zone. So it definitely challenges defenses. So I'm pretty sure the 49ers, they're going to want to try to contain him and keep him in the pocket. That's much easier said than done. We've seen some of the things that he's done this year. Kyler Murray, man, I think everybody knows he's playing well, but he's playing at a really high level. And the challenges that he puts on the defense and the pressure on a play-to-play basis, I don't know how you defend it. I'm curious to see what DeMeco Ryans does to try to contain Kyler Murray because he's playing so well right now.
What is the confidence level in this defense right now? I mean, you're going to this rookie quarterback maybe a little bit earlier than anticipated with the Jimmy G injury. So I imagine you have to lean in on this defense. How comfortable is that idea for the San Francisco 49ers?
You know what, man? Like, the defense has actually played very well. It's the offense that's been letting them down. Last week against Seattle, the 49ers forced 5 straight 3-and-outs to start the game, and it resulted in 7 points for the offense going into halftime. Like, so many lost opportunities. Against the Packers, the offense was the one that was turning the ball over, giving the Packers opportunities to be in scoring position early on, and the defense held up as much as they could. They've had several goal line stops, red zone stops where it resulted in turnover on downs. So the defense has done well. I think the one area where 49ers are going to definitely need to lean on the defense in this game is for some takeaways. They haven't had a takeaway since Dre Greenlaw's pick 6 week 1. So that's the big thing, especially against a team like Kyler Murray, and Arizona Cardinals. You're going to have to make him uncomfortable, get him to take the ball away so you can give your young rookie quarterback, Trey Lance, more opportunities.
It's tough, I think for just any dynamic here. Obviously, you look at Chase Edmonds. I mean, it's a very well-balanced offensive attack here for the Arizona Cardinals. But, one of the questions I had for you about the defensive side of the ball, we know Fred Warner is one of the best inside backers in football. What can you say has been attributed to maybe some of the defensive struggles the 49ers have had this year? Where do you think they can improve the most?
I think it's the penalties in the secondary. A lot of people will probably tell you that the 49ers secondary is not good. I don't think that's the case. I think they've been really good. Actually, they've exceeded my expectations, but they've had these penalties like holding or pass interference that result in big chunk yardage and keep drives going. I think that's the one area where they definitely can improve more so than anything else. The coverage, I feel like, has been good, but it's just that penalty. And I hate it because me being a defensive back, being a cornerback, it's like these calls are so, subjective to the referee and how he sees it down the field. And you can see a guy get mugged, they don't call anything, and then another time you barely touch a guy, then it's like, oh yeah, they throw flags all over, and it results in 40 yards. And we saw this with Kyler Murray early in his career with the 49ers, where I remember they called like back-to-back pass interference down the field on Richard Sherman. And it's just like, gosh, like those are back-breaking. And the 49ers secondary right now has had those issues. I think that's been the biggest problem.
Tell you what, we got three DBs right here, but
Yes.
I played safety, so when they called me for a penalty, I committed that penalty. I did. I deserved it every time. Everybody, it is Eric Crocker, co-host over at Locked On 49ers, along with Brian Peacock, and of course, co-host over at Locked On NFL Draft, which is officially relaunched. Eric and Ryan Tracy holding it down over there. You can get more from Eric every day at Eric_Crocker. Crocker, we appreciate you coming through, man. Enjoy the game today. We'll be seeing you here soon.
All right, appreciate y'all.
Appreciate you, bud.
I love Croc, man. Croc always posts these clips on Twitter, too, the DB play, right? You want to understand how defensive backs think, whether it be alignment, how a coverage changes based on formation. And as we was talking about, too, if you have zone coverage and a guy goes vertical and it extends past play, you almost have to play it as man. There's some rules that defenses has, like if it's match, for example. If a guy goes vertical, he's your guy. You got to go with it.
That's yours.
I think that's how dynamic NFL defenses are. And everybody's like, oh, well, they're playing cover 4 here. They could be playing cover 4 to one side of the field, and they could be playing man on the other. Like that's how
on the opposite, yeah.
NFL defenses are. It's not just what you see at the college level or high school. Or all right, hey, we're running cover 4. That means we got this corner on this side. He's playing that deep quarter. The other corner's playing deep quarter. And you have 2 safeties playing deep quarters. It could change at the NFL level where you have deep quarter, and then you have hook to curl, and then middle third there. I mean, that's how coverage changes. So Crockett does a really great job of educating people on the levels of concepts of defensive back play. Yeah, Ross, I mean, we had 3 DBs here on the show. We might have to create a new podcast for that, man. Secondary perspective. I like it. We're already pumping out ideas here.
I absolutely love it. Hey, look, Eric Crocker, absolutely no doubt following him. I get smarter every time that I go to his Twitter page, but I also get smarter every time that I tune in to our next guest. Listen, the Locked On Bengals podcast and the Cincinnati Bengals, by the way, have been absolutely phenomenal so far this season. And I'm a little bit attached to the Bengals, not going to lie. They're kind of Louisiana South at this point with their drafting and their free agency and everything like that. So I'm absolutely loving what I'm seeing over there. But I'll tell you, I get smarter every single time I listen to the show. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guy, Jake Liscow, one of the co-hosts over at Locked On Bengals. You can follow him on Twitter at Jake Liscow. Him and James Rapine doing a phenomenal job over with Locked On Bengals every Monday through Friday. Jake, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, guys. I had a 16-hour travel day yesterday and slept for like 9 hours or something. I'm ready to go.
Nice. All right, he got the sleep in. That's what I'm talking about.
No, I love that. Jake, obviously the Bengals this season, they've been, I don't want to say surprisingly good because I always felt like they're probably going to be one of the best teams in that division. I think it's a tough division. We look at the NFC West. We look at the AFC West. I also want to talk about that AFC North division. Pittsburgh's struggling right now, but outside of that, you look at the Bengals, you look at the Baltimore Ravens, and you also look at the Cleveland Browns. That is a tough 3-man race right now for that division. Just your overall thoughts on the first part of the season so far for the Bengals.
Yeah, I think that the Steelers are pretty much what I personally thought they would be.
They are who we thought they were.
Well, eternally dislike the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Ben Roethlisberger doesn't, he looks like he did late last year, right? And they haven't been able to maintain the defense the way they did last year. But the Browns and the Ravens still really good football teams. The Bengals, we'll find out a lot today, I think, about really how good of a football team they are. They have beaten the Steelers. They beat the Vikings, who are 1-3. I think the Vikings a little bit better than their record. And they scrape out a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday Night Football, which was very exciting. I was there in person. It was great. But it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? And so this week they play against the Green Bay Packers, also a little bit depleted with injuries. And we'll find out a little bit more about Joe Burrow, about the Cincinnati Bengals, because they do still have to beat Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, etc.
It is really interesting because I know that the Bengals caught a lot of flack early on over the course of the offseason, not drafting an offensive lineman, but instead going with Jamar Chase. But here we are now with Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers going head to head. Aaron Rodgers has nearly 400 more career touchdowns than Joe Burrow. However, Joe Burrow's thrown more touchdowns to first-round picks than Aaron Rodgers. So looking back at the draft class now, a few weeks removed or a few weeks into the NFL season, how has it worked out for the Bengals so far?
Man, what a stat, Ross.
It's a great one, right? Isn't that great? I love that stat.
That's amazing. Aaron Rodgers, draft him a wide receiver. Well, I guess that's why he's leaving Green Bay. The draft choice I think has worked. Like Penei Sewell could very well be a franchise left tackle in the NFL. He's probably on his way to doing that. But Jonah Williams has been one of the best pass protectors in the league so far. If you look at like pass block win rate, amount of pressures he's surrendered, he's been just fine at left tackle. And it's not like they've played slouches. They played the Bears, Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn there. The Vikings, Daniil Huntley's on the other side for the most part, but they added Riley Reif over there, and Riley Reif has been steady. He's not an all-pro or anything like that, but he's not Bobby Hart either, and that's what Bengals fans have been watching at right tackle for years, and Bobby Hart currently not on a team. The left guard last year and on the play when Joe Burrow got hurt was Michael Jordan. He's also no longer on a team after the Bengals cut him after really a pretty good preseason in his defense. But Quentin Spain at left guard has looked a lot like Tennessee Quentin Spain, not last year or Buffalo Quentin Spain. So that's a significant improvement at left guard. The questions are really center in right guard. Trey Hopkins still dealing with, I think, some lingering effects from offseason ACL surgery. He got hurt in the last game of the season last year. He hasn't looked as he did before. So we'll find out if Trey Hopkins can get back from that injury and perform at the, NFL average level that the Bengals got used to from him at center. And then at right guard is where it's really interesting. Jackson Carman, the rookie, right? The controversial in some ways second round pick, has looked good in pass protection, has had some issues run blocking a little bit. So in terms of pass pro, which is why everyone was screaming, protect Burrow, draft Penei Sewell, the Bengals have been better. Not elite. They're not the Cleveland Browns. They're not the Los Angeles Rams in pass protection where they've got these great offensive lines bookend to bookend, but they've been better. And it's not like they've played, again, it's not like they've played slouches until Jacksonville on the defensive line. So that is encouraging. Again, another test today. We'll find out a little bit more. Preston Smith's been better this year. Kenny Clark really good in the middle, and Kenny Clark is really on Sunday the guy that I'm worried about for the Bengals if you're looking for threats on the Green Bay defensive line, because he's been eating centers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and Trey Hopkins has been struggling a little bit, so we'll see how that matchup goes in the interior this Sunday.
Well, I wanted to shift now to the secondary. Guys have been kind of banged up. I know there's some injuries going through there. This is a tough test, obviously, as you mentioned, against Devontae Adams. I feel like outside of that, you have the opportunity to make some plays in that secondary. What is the state right now of the Bengals? Who's out for this game for them at the cornerback position? And even are they potentially going to miss Jesse Bates again?
Everybody's healthy, apparently.
Good. There we go.
I'm pretty sure all 22 starters are healthy.
Nice.
Like Joe Mixon's playing in this game. He was questionable until the very last minute. The corners, this is the first time somebody, I don't remember who, so sorry I'm not giving them credit. Somebody pointed out that this is the first time that Zach Taylor has had both of his starting corners since in 2 years, I think.
Wow.
Trey Wayne's missing all of last year with that pectoral injury, and last week Trey Wayne's made his Bengals debut against Jacksonville, but Chidobe Awuzie was dealing with a groin injury. Cheeto's back this week. Jesse Bates was full go all week. He's good to go. So the Bengals remarkably healthy for a Week 5 team. The only significant role player that I imagine for this team they're missing is Joseph Osai, who had the preseason injury. He's going to be out for the year. He had a meniscus repair, and so they are missing that edge depth and that juice that Joseph Osai would bring to the pass rush, but the defensive interior has really been the strength of the team anyway. And so as long as they can rely on that, Trey Hendrickson replacing, if not improving on the productivity they got from Carl Lawson last year, they should be okay on this defense with how healthy they are in the secondary. But again, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, you just have to think they're going to get theirs, right? No matter how good your secondary is, you're generally going to see those two guys get theirs. But I will say this, Aaron Rodgers, and he said this himself, weird things happen to him in Cincinnati. So we'll see what happens.
I hope he was talking about all on the football field.
Yeah. There's a game he threw 2 picks. I think the last time he was in Cincinnati threw 2 picks. The Packers, I think that's the game when Jonathan Franklin fumbled as the Packers were trying to kill the game. It was returned for a touchdown, and the Packers ended up losing. And Michael Johnson batted down a pass at the line of scrimmage on a 4th down that probably would have converted, kept the Packers in the game. So weird things on the football field for for Aaron Rodgers in Cincinnati.
That could have been one of those tweets without context hashtags.
Right. Weird things happen to me in Cincinnati. Okay. Look, I always love when we get the opportunity to talk with the guys from Locked On Bengals. Once again, it is Jake Liscow, and you can find his co-host as well, James Rapine, every Monday through Friday over on the Locked On Bengals podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube as well. Jake, enjoy the game today. I think, look, I know the Green Bay Packers are the Packers, but I'm pulling for these Bengals. Excited to see what you've got after the game.
Thanks, Ross. Joe Burrow versus Aaron Rodgers. That's what it comes down to, right? Let's find out how ready Joe Burrow is.
That's absolutely it. Looking forward to it. We'll see you soon, buddy.
See ya.
This is going to be a Broadway matchup. You know, you got the hair of Aaron Rodgers, and you got just the, you know, the sleekness. You know, this could be like a remake of a football version of Grease here between these two guys. But
look, there's an interesting thing between these two teams too, because the Cincinnati Bengals are 3-1, but they're 3-1 against teams that have combined for 2 wins so far this season. But the Green Bay Packers are 3-1 against teams that have combined for 3 wins so far this season in terms of where their wins are. So, you know, so really, what's the division between the two, and which one's 3-1 is more real than the other, or whatever? I really think that. I mean, look, I'm pulling for the Bengals for my own bias, but I also don't think that the Bengals are out of this just because it's the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Ross, we've learned so much, I think, through the last 4 weeks of the NFL season. It doesn't matter what your record is anymore. It doesn't matter. Like, for example, there were games like we're going into the New England Patriots, New Orleans Saints game a few weeks ago, and I had thought, I was like, man, you know, I just don't think the Saints have it to match up. And all of a sudden they go into Foxborough, they beat them like it was nothing. And then last week, we have the Jets beating the Titans in overtime.
Right.
We have the Giants beating the Saints in overtime. The NFL is so weird this year. And look, all the games have been pretty competitive too for the most part. I mean, we've been having Thursday night primetime games that have been entertaining down to the wire. Same thing with Monday night games. The NFL, that's why we tune in every single week, right? You know, when a team loses, or if they lose to a team, they're like, oh, they shouldn't have lost to that team. I think a lot of those assumptions that a lot of football fans make, and I think, you know, even myself, I'm guilty of this. But we go into matchups thinking a lot based on how a team looked last season. And we also combine in how they looked last week. But last year does not matter anymore. You can look at a team like, for example, the Cincinnati Bengals that had some ups and downs. They really got it going down the stretch, but they look like a good football team right now, and they look well-disciplined because now there is a lot of pressure on Zach Taylor this year. There's no question about it, but the team is responding really well to that. So it's like you never know right now in the NFL. I think that 2021, it's wild. I still think we have to wait at least another 4 or 5 weeks to have a real definitive look as to, okay, this team's legit, this team is not.
Right. Yeah. And the 17th game kind of changes everything, right? Because it's that one game difference can shift an entire division. I mean, look at how many times we've seen, you know, the AFC North settled by 1 game in terms of who is winning that division, who's at the top of that division. Now, all of a sudden you have an additional game, and it can shuffle everything up. You know, we were talking about kind of the any given Sunday aspect of the NFL. You have a couple of teams that could be on upset watch today, right? You have the Carolina Panthers that are going to be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Panthers dealing with some injuries. The Las Vegas Raiders have looked really good so far this season at 3-1, but Justin Fields looked to get a little bit more comfortable in Chicago, and they're 2-2 at the moment. You've got the Miami Dolphins going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. No, I'm kidding about that one. But hey, but then again, who knows? Who really knows? You've got those teams. They're out there. I love seeing this. In Lance, we trust. See, the San Francisco 49ers fans are confident. That's another team that maybe is on, upset patrol in a way when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, who are 4-0. The San Francisco 49ers going in with a rookie quarterback 2-2. And we've seen it in the NFL before. These rookie quarterbacks come in. There's no tape on them. There's no expectations on them. There's no understanding of what exactly they're going to be. And this is the first time they've actually had the opportunity to build a full game plan around the young quarterback. Maybe he comes in and surprises up against that Arizona Cardinals defense that has been good, but could struggle against this mobile quarterback who has some bells and whistles that we haven't seen yet.
Well, not to mention that Byron Murphy, cornerback 1 for the Cardinals, he's out of today's matchup too. So that bodes really, really well, I think, for Deebo Samuel, my fantasy football team. But, you know, here's the thing with Trey Lance as well. They had packages designed for him even when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy, but it was nothing to an extent that teams are like, all right, well, if Jimmy's playing, we have to be prepared for this, which makes it easier for a defense. But now you give a guy like Trey Lance all the reps this week, you can expand what he's able to do a little bit more. Now he's still a rookie. Last week he completed 50% of his passes, went 9 of 18. He had 2 tuds, and obviously one of those was to Deebo Samuel. But you also have to factor in this will be his first full game as an NFL starter. So it may pick up a little bit. We saw Justin Fields have some of these moments where the game, he said in the preseason that came back on, he's like, oh yeah, the game's really slow for me. The Chicago Bears game, against the Cleveland Browns a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't so slow for him. But then last week we saw him turn in a little bit of a better performance against the Detroit Lions. I think here for Trey Lance, I think you're going to see a combination of some rollout, play action stuff, some things that he's really good at, and also maybe some design runs on 3rd and short. But if I'm the 49ers right now with the position that they're banged up at QB, I would try to take the ball out of Trey Lance's hands as much as possible on design runs. I would not want to have him take some shots unless you absolutely have to take a shot there with the QB draw, QB power, whatever you want to do. But you want to limit those things because San Francisco, the last couple of years, Ross, every quarterback that they've had, whether it be the first string to the 3rd string guy, they've been banged up. And that's been one of the things we've talked about every year.
Yeah, and it's really been all around that San Francisco 49ers roster, offense to defense, skill position, none. I mean, it has been an issue for them. Hey, as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL Sunday, we're going to start getting the picks and team and game conversation here in just a moment. But, we love our live content here at the Locked On Podcast Network, in addition to the Monday through Friday podcast that we release for you all across the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, and dozens of college shows as well. But we love our live content too. So I want to give a quick shout out to the WNBA post-game show that's going to be taking place after Game 1 between the Chicago Sky and the Phoenix Mercury. That is going to be on October 13th. Following the game, you can go ahead and subscribe to that over on the Locked On Women's Basketball YouTube page so that you can check that out. And you can follow along on Twitter at Locked On Network for all of our live events, podcasts that are dropping as they release. Everything that you need, you can get right there. All right, Cody, let's dive into some of the games today and just kind of go through some picks and conversation here right now. Just a quick update. The Atlanta Falcons and the New York Jets still going down at the moment right now. 28 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. A convenient 28-3 placement there for the Atlanta Falcons. Love to see it. Right now, the Falcons still ahead 20-9 in this one. That game, of course, being played in London as a part of the international series. Some of the early games that will hit. Let's start off with, I think, one of the bigger matchups that we've already sort of highlighted, or that we've already sort of maybe kind of highlighted a little bit, but I want to get to your Denver Broncos here going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What should we expect with Teddy Bridgewater in this one?
Well, he fully cleared concussion protocol. He's expected to get the start for the Broncos. Cortland Sutton rolled his ankle in Friday's practice. He tested things out this morning. He's active. He's ready to go. So that should help out a lot for the Denver Broncos in terms of their offense. Obviously, they lost a couple of the guys last week. They lost Teddy during that game. Drew Lock had to come in. And this is a game I think that the Broncos have to come into it. And they have to, and I hope all week long they focused on how can we protect our quarterback, because against the Baltimore Ravens, they took shots. Guess who they're going against? They're going against TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Melvin Ingram. And that right there poses a little bit of a problem. And I think there were too many miscommunication issues by the Broncos on the offensive line. I think the expectation is that they're going to have both starters at guard back, Dalton Reisner at left, Graham Glasgow at right. So that should help there. But no Albert Okwuegbunam, the Broncos' second string tight end who injured his hamstring. He's now on IR for the next couple of weeks there. So you're going to have Noah Fant. You're going to have a little bit more of Eric Sauber and potentially a lot of Andrew Beck. And we'll see if Sean Byer gets called up. But the Broncos right now, Ross, I think they have to try to find a way to run the football against this Pittsburgh Steelers team. Find a way to do that, because they've abandoned the run in games where they've had it going with Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. Got to get it going. And defensively, look, Big Ben, he's not Lamar Jackson this week. Denver last week, they sold out to stop the run, and then they dared Lamar Jackson to beat him through the air, and they did, which was surprising considering the Broncos secondary. But when you run a lot of cover zero, 80% of your defensive snaps, you're going to run into that risk if you have a miscommunication on that back end. Big plays happen. And that's exactly what happened. But they're going to get Patrick Surtain back. Ronald Darby's activated off of IR today. He'll be good to go. Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan. They're going to have to match up against a healthy wide receiving core now that features Chase Claypool returning, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster. Guys have been dealing with injuries. I know James Washington has been ruled out, but you also have to count for Pat Freiermuth as well. Yeah. But this is a team where you have to really stop the run, because Pittsburgh, they're the 32nd ranked run offense in the NFL right now. The Broncos are the 5th ranked rushing defense. So that bodes well. If you can limit their ability to run, You force Big Ben to throw it, but you can't overlook Big Ben. Everyone's saying, "Oh, I can't throw a pass 10 yards." He threw a 40-yard pass last week, folks. Come on. You can't overlook him, even though he is not who he used to be. He can still throw it downfield. So this is a game where Denver has to be super aggressive, in my opinion, Ross.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just a reminder for those that are watching along, cover 0, no safeties over the top, no zones over the top, man coverage across the board. Usually bringing an extra blitzer, some extra pressure in those situations as well to help out that man coverage, so it can get a little dangerous for a defense that runs that so much. All right, we're gonna get to Vinny Iyer here in just a moment to go over some start and sit to get your day started for all of your fantasy football advice. But real quick, I want to talk about 2 games. We could just kind of make some picks here and talk a little bit about them. But 2 big games coming up later on today in the afternoon slot. The Cleveland Browns heading to take on the Los Angeles Chargers, a matchup of 3-1s there. 2 teams that have been very impressive, slightly different reasons, but still very impressive. And then you have for the Sunday night game tonight, you have the Buffalo Bills traveling to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. It's going to be a fun matchup. Let's start off with the Cleveland Browns and the Los Angeles Chargers. Just a real quick kind of insight on that, and what's your pick for this game?
I'm going to go with the Chargers on this one. They look like a really good football team right now. Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, no question here. But Brandon Staley, what he's been able to do for those guys defensively, they're aggressive. They get after the quarterback. They intercept passes. They're getting healthier there, too. Now, obviously, you have to keep an eye on some of those other injuries. But Derwin James looked good against the Las Vegas Raiders, who were the number 1 offense coming into Monday Night Football's matchup this past week. They found a way to limit what the Raiders have been capitalizing on all season. So you go into this matchup, you have Baker Mayfield. And look, if anybody watched that 14-7 slugfest last week against Minnesota Vikings, you might have a little bit of concern about this matchup. You have OBJ back, but also Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle. He's going to be out of this game with an injury, so that it doesn't bode well. And we found out that Baker Mayfield's playing with a partially torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. How many times can you take shots there, maybe land wrong before that impacts you? It's not your throwing arm, but we talk about equilibrium. If you're hanging down and you're favoring it, it's going to suck to have to take some shots. So I'm eager to see what they can do there. They're going to have to try to run the football, which is going to be hard against this defense. I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, it's a number 9 defense going up against the number 2 defense and the number 1 rushing offense for those Cleveland Browns. So it's going to be a big-time matchup there in the trenches in this one. The thing that I like, and you mentioned Brandon Staley and what he's done with that Los Angeles Chargers defense, all 4 opponents that the Chargers have faced so far this season, not just the ones that they've won against in those 3 games, but all 4 have scored their fewest season points so far against this Chargers defense. That defense is for real. I'm going to take the Chargers in this one too, but I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle for both of them. And then to wrap us up before we get to Vinny here, we have the number 30 defense going up against the number 1 defense in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Buffalo Bills at in the evening here for Sunday Night Football. Can the Chiefs get right? They've been a little shaky so far this season.
Well, I tell you what, the offense for the Bills has been fun to watch, but it hasn't been because of Josh Allen. Josh Allen has not played how he did last year. However, you know what they have found? They've found a running game, Ross. Finally, they have balance between Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. Contributions, you have Dawson Knox catching touchdowns in the red zone. So you have to account for not only just Zach Moss in the red zone, but Dawson Knox. You have Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, not Adam Beasley. I work with Adam Beasley. Cole Beasley. So it's just like kind of pick your poison. So if Josh Allen can get to a point where he starts playing how he did last year, they're going to be the most dangerous team in the NFL, and they're going to have really strong aspirations and chances, I think, of getting to the Super Bowl this year, barring any kind of tragic injury, anything like that. They look like the most complete team right now in the NFL from offense, defense, special teams. And look, Kansas City's defense, they are rough, especially against the run. So I'm going to go with Buffalo in this matchup. Buffalo's angry. And look, there's been some bulletin board material. The Kansas City Chiefs social team posting out the last time we played Buffalo, we went to the Super Bowl here because Buffalo remembers, and I don't think you want to kick an angry dog. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, is going to bring a great message this week. He's going to have a big-time game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on the Buffalo Bills in this one as well. It would be really strange to see the Kansas City Chiefs 2-3, but hey, it's possible. And to me, it all comes down to the defense. Patrick Mahomes, according to NFL and their stats and info department, the sort of delineation here when the defense allows 30 or fewer points, and this Buffalo Bills team can score 30 in a hurry. Patrick Mahomes 39-2 when the Chiefs defense allows less than 30 points, but 7-10 when they allow more than 30 points. I think you might be able to dig that up for just about any quarterback out there, because if your defense is allowing over 30 points, you're in trouble. But hey, this is a part of what it is to be playing in the NFL. It's not just about the quarterback, it's about the entire team. Now, when it comes down to fantasy football, might be about your quarterback, might be about all of those skill position players, of course, that are there. So we're going to bring in our good friend to help us wrap up today, Vinny Iyer, host of the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast on Twitter at Vinny Iyer. Vinny, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Ross. Thanks seeing you guys. Good to see you guys again, you and Cody, and let's do this for Week 5.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Looking at some of the injuries around the NFL, obviously the Tennessee Titans, they missed having A.J. Brown last week. He's expected to play today. Now, for fantasy football managers, should they maybe put him in a lineup, or should they be cautious this week and maybe hold off?
Well, they need him right now because Julio Jones is down. They're not the healthiest everywhere else at wide receiver. So they got to establish this connection downfield between Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. It's been missing part of their offense here early in the season. And I think the encouraging sign is that A.J. Brown got full practices, not just for one day, but for a couple days. So that means he's doing things without limitations here. I think they played it right in not rushing him back. I think Julio, he's a little older, tougher to recover here. A.J. Brown, you knew he could bounce back a little faster. So I think that was pleasantly surprising news. And I don't think the Jaguars are going to be able to stop him. I think they're going to do the usual thing they do in Tennessee, run the ball with Derrick Henry, set up the long shots to play on play action. So I think A.J. Brown is going to rebound, and people have been waiting for him in fantasy to deliver, and I think this is the week.
Now, Vinny, every week here you do some start and sits for the Locked On Podcast Network. What are some of your key start and sits for this week?
Yeah, I think the game that you want to have a lot of investment in, whether you're playing a season long or daily, is the Packers-Bengals game. I mean, you look at the situation here. You have Jair Alexander down for the count here. He's not going to come back. This Packers secondary is not good otherwise. T. Higgins is back. So you got all the receivers there that you like, Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase against that secondary. And you figure they're going to have to throw a lot. So I think it's going to be a fun one between the Packers and Bengals. Everyone in that game you want to get in your lineups as much as possible. Now, people might be asking, do you want to get in your backup running backs this week that are starters again? And we know Dalvin Cook is inactive. So, yeah, plug in Alexander Madison. Great matchup against the Lions at home. And then Damian Williams. There's been a lot of questions about him, but he's been productive even with David Montgomery in the lineup for the Bears. So we saw him in Kansas City. He can get the job done. He knows the offense really well. Against the Raiders, he's definitely a guy that you're going to plug and play right away that you picked up off the waiver wire. Trey Lance is a good one. People were asking about him. Should they get him in there? Yeah, you should, because he's going to have a high running floor. He's making his first NFL start there against the Cardinals. We know the Cardinals are going to put up points on the other side. Cardinals defense has played pretty well, but they're vulnerable in some areas, and I think that's going to help Trey Lance have a nice debut here in Arizona.
I'm struggling today, Vinny. I have a lot of tough decisions I have to make. You know, you helped me out a little bit with A.J. Brown, but I have 3 wide receivers. You look at a matchup, you have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin. They're going to be taking on the Miami Dolphins that have Xavier Howard, and they also have Byron Jones. And I also have Emmanuel Sanders who's going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, who out of those 3, I have to choose 2 of those 3, who do I start and who do I leave on the bench this week?
Well, I think I'm always starting Chris Godwin. He's just too involved in the offense, and he can avoid those guys because he can run a lot of his routes in the slot, and they don't have Rob Gronkowski. So they got to work the middle of the field with him and Cameron Braid, I think, in this game a little bit more. I think it's going to be a running-type game for the Bucs, and they could win rather easily, but I still like working the middle of the field. So Antonio Brown, he's a big play threat when they need him in kind of higher-scoring games. And on the outside, it doesn't look like a great matchup, as you said. So Emmanuel Sanders, we know the Chiefs are struggling on the outside. There's going to be some attention on Stephon Diggs. So the 2 former Steelers, I think I go Sanders over Brown here in terms of the safe play and maybe also the higher upside play this week.
Oh, I love it.
There you go. Any particular matchups you're looking at fantasy owners, you're advising fantasy owners to maybe avoid this week?
Yeah, I don't really love a couple games of the schedule. That's the Patriots-Texans game. I don't expect a lot in this game. I mean, it's a 38.5 Vegas over-under. I mean, the Texans are just hard to trust anyone. I don't know if they can score points again against the Patriots this week. Patriots, I like Mac Jones, but I don't know if they're going to throw a lot. Damian Harris has a really good spot in that game. Another game where I'm really avoiding everyone, another very low point total is that Broncos-Steelers game Cody just mentioned there. Not a lot of offense is going to be seen in that one. I mean, you have Teddy Bridgewater, which is good to help a lot of their key players there, and Cortland Sutton is playing, and that you do have the injury on the other side with Cameron Sutton missing the game for the Steelers, but that's not going to be a high-scoring game. We know both teams are going to grind it out with their running game and play defense in that one, so I think that's going to be even lower than what we expect points-wise in that matchup in Pittsburgh.
Understandably so. Vinny, we appreciate you. We'll see you again next week. We got a couple of bye weeks that are setting in, so it's going to be a ton of fun to sort of talk a little bit about the shuffle that has to take place for fantasy owners. But you can catch up and keep up with everything that Vinny's got for you over on the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well. And, of course, on Twitter at Vinny Iyer. Vinny, always a pleasure to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming through.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good one. Good luck this week in your games.
Thank you. You as well.
I tell you what, Ross, Vinny has kept it to where I'm 4-0 in my league so far this season. And a lot of it, and I've never, like I said, I've never taken Deebo Samuel out of my lineup. I've never taken Derrick Henry or Ezekiel Elliott out. You know, it's been good. I'm living the benefits of that. But today I find myself in just such a tough predicament because you do have A.J. Brown returning, right? But I'm worried about one move could set him back. Like, that's the thing for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess I'm going to play him today over Emmanuel Sanders, which kind of bums me out. But, man, it's just like, I don't know who to go with. It's rough because I'm not taking Deebo out. Hey, why? Why would I do that? So I don't know, Ross. I'm stuck.
Here's my hope. My hope is that every one of your receivers has a big day. That way, no matter what happens, you didn't make the wrong choice. You know what I mean?
Well, I still have Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins as my quarterbacks too. So I think I'm good today. So we should be good, barring something tragic.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Cody, we got another one in the books here. Locked on NFL Sunday continues to come through. Appreciate you being here with me as always, and appreciate all of you for tuning in, whether you caught it live or you're watching it later over at the Locked On NFL YouTube page, which is there for you for everything that you need, including our Locked On NFL podcast, our Locked On NFL Insider, Isaiah Stanbeck coming through with some great information on Russell Wilson and the injury there, as well as, of course, all of our Locked On Nows and Locked On Today clips as well. So always a ton for you over there. But of course, the lifeblood of our network are the local shows. Cody over at Locked On Broncos, myself over at Locked On Saints. Make sure you check out your favorite Locked On podcast every Monday through Friday. Just give it a little search, whatever your favorite team name is. Give it a Locked On up ahead, and it'll get you all taken care of. Cody, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I appreciate you being here for another Sunday. Looking forward to next weekend.
Now we're already 5 weeks in, Ross. All football talk, no fluff. We have some really exciting things coming your way here with the Locked On NFL Sunday pregame show. We can't share the details yet. You're going to find out when it happens, but it's going to be spectacular. We can't wait for all of you to see that. But that will wrap up today's Locked On NFL